What's up, everybody? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to The Right Mindset. Today, I'm going to go over developing your antagonists and basically how to write a good antagonist. We will talk about what makes an antagonist great and how to make your antagonist have weight to them. Yeah, wordplay was totally on purpose. I'm just saying. Let's develop the right mindset. Welcome to the world of writing. Like I said, today is going to be about developing your antagonist, or to develop your antagonist. Always a big shout out to everyone that's supporting. If you're new here and you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. If you've been here for a while and you like what you see, but you haven't yet subscribed. All right, let's get to it. What makes an antagonist great? Not great, but great. All right. What makes Darth Vader Darth Vader? I mean, other than he's Darth Vader. How was Hannibal Lecter a powerfully interesting antagonist force while still behind bars? Oh, that's interesting. There is a difference between making an antagonist powerful or scary and even compelling. A compelling antagonist force, a compelling antagonistic force comes with them something more than this is what the protagonist is up against. What makes a good antagonist compelling in a narrative? Well, a great antagonist should be a strong and worthy adversary to your protagonist. They shouldn't be weak and easily beaten, but they can be weak and still have other attributes that make them an adversary. Then again, they don't have to be beaten in the sense of a hand-to-hand. Remember, antagonistic forces can be more than another person or creature battling your protagonist. On the other hand, if you have an antagonist, you shouldn't have them so powerful that they are defeated by random chance, right? For example, Sherlock Holmes has his arch nemesis Moriarty, right? Moriarty, and who is also a criminal mastermind, who is every bit as smart as the Sherlock of the Holmes, right? But why are both Sherlock and Moriarty interesting in their own right? Couldn't Moriarty just be a super smart criminal mastermind of the week that Sherlock Holmes must defeat? So this is what it comes down to. What makes an antagonist great? The greatness of an antagonist is that they have depth. That an antagonist is more than just, I have to shoot the big blue ray into the sky, or you're my enemy, or it's Loki against Thor. Loki wants to be Thor is not as compelling as Loki always feels second fiddle to Thor, feels he has a worthiness to him, but no one ever accepts it, learns that he's, spoiler alert, learns that he's the son of the Ice Giant King, right? Learns that his father who raised him, Odin, was the one who took him and raised him as his own, but lied to him. Finds out that he's never been an Asgardian. He's never been a part of that world, right? That's why he feels. So now he has to prove his worth. So what does he do? He destroys the king from the Iceland. He saves his father, quote unquote, even though he put his father into peril. And he wants to feel like he has the same rights to be king as Thor, etc., etc., right? All that is more interesting than Thor and Loki have to fight. All right. Now, the plot to Thor, if it was Loki wants to fight Thor and take over Asgard is not necessarily as exciting as everything that kind of happens. Now, the real plot to Thor, as we know, is it's Thor's journey to discover the true weight and value of what it means to be selfless and a true ruler of what is it, 7 kingdoms or the 9 kingdoms. And that's his journey, right? Thor is like aggressive in the beginning. He tells, he goes to war. Everything is fists first, and then he's stripped of all his powers, and he learns peace and understanding. Basically, Buddha, where he's just like, yeah, everything is just how it's supposed to be. It's okay that I'm not super strong anymore. I'm going to accept it. And then he finds his real worth, and then he gets the power of anyone who be worthy of the power of Thor may hold the hammer, right? So whatever. And he gets the hammer and he fights back. But then he's like, I don't want to be king. It's not what I want right now. I'm not ready to be king. But one day I hope you are proud of me as a son. And he's like, I've always been proud of you. It's like really nice moment. Okay. My point is that journey is interesting for Thor, right? We like to see that. But Loki's interesting because he has almost the same depth to his story. The antagonistic force needs to be more than just a force. And the same thing goes with the villain is nature. If a meteor is coming to destroy the planet, the antagonistic force has to have depth to it that influences the world, that influences characters, that, the weight, not the physical weight, but the weight of the meteor coming is not the meteor coming. It's what it does and how it makes you think. The characters, this is it. We only have this planet. We only have this. We have blah, blah, blah. And all that is what makes the meteor, the antagonist for the nature of the meteor, so powerful as a threat, right? And that's the thing. Like, even if you go for a good versus evil, let's say you have your hero protagonist and your villain antagonist, right? Like, Darth Vader is compelling because there's depth to him, and his depth is hidden and shrouded in mystery. And over the course of the 4, 5, and 6 movies, we discover small bits of his humanity, and that just makes him even more interesting, right? He's not just the brute. So, how do we make your antagonist have weight? So making your antagonist have weight, basically, as much time as you put into understanding your protagonist, you should place it into your antagonist. A painful backstory is just as powerful a tool to building depth to any character as it is giving them a strong, healthy upbringing. Not all antagonists come from a terrible childhood. The best part is, whatever you come up with doesn't have to be in the story. It's just elements that help you understand their motivations. So what you come up with doesn't have to be what's in the book. It just has to give your characters that depth, that value. The choices they choose, or the choices they make, are based on their upbringing, are based on what they've learned as characters. And the more you can understand where they're coming from, the stronger those characters will be as an entity. Okay. Another fun element to honing a fantastic antagonist is first look at your protagonist. The yin and yang is a way to craft the polar opposites of your protagonist. Think of Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, right? If you've ever seen The Patriot, you got Colonel William Tavington and Benjamin Martin. Polar opposites, right? They're basically the same person. They're just on opposite sides, right? Figure out who your protagonist is and what their opposing version would be if they had made different choices in their life. You see this in comics a lot. Mr. Fantastic, Dr. Doom, Iron Man, Ironmonger. It's all there. Another element to making your antagonist have weight is sometimes it's not about your protagonist. It's about your antagonist and their wants and the why of their wants. All right, so Terrence Fletcher from Whiplash wants musical perfection from his students, and we all go to an abusive lengths to get there. He goes to an abusive length to get there. He's an extreme monster, right? So why he's a bully. So there has to be something from his life that gives him the fuel to feel righteous in these actions that makes sense, that he's not necessarily bullying, he's inspiring and motivating and bringing you to perfection. If you've ever seen or read the White Witch in The Lion, the White Witch in the story in the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. The White Witch is an evil dictator who wants to stop the children, right, from taking the throne. Why? She wants to keep her power. Okay. Now, this is just we're the good light, you're the bad light, and we want to stop the evil, right? There is depth to her character. There's an understanding of her character. It's portrayed a little bit better in the books than it is in the movie, but that's not for me to say, or it's just my opinion. However, she is basically just an evil dictator in the movie, and the kids are like, "No, you're bad. We have to stop you, and we're the rightful throne." Okay. Anyway, how about something a little bit more inanimate in force, right? What about so the antagonist, their wants and their whys are the reversing age effects in Benjamin Button's. So his reverse aging condition is his biggest foe in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button by F. Scott Fitzgerald. What's the want? The want of that antagonistic force is to reverse the age of Benjamin from old man to child. Why? Nature has its order. So it condemns him to this old body, but walks him through aging and becoming a young adult. But then he dies as a child, so it's a reverse life, right? So that's how you find like interesting twists to your antagonist. You look at the antagonist and you say, you know what? How about let's ignore the protagonist? Let's make a really interesting antagonist, and then we'll focus on the protagonist opposed to the antagonist. A lot of times we have our heroes and we go, what are we going to do to give them a force? Well, it's okay to start with the force itself, right? Another thing is being evil doesn't make an antagonist. That's right. You can fall into the "they are really evil" trope, but why take away from a good story when a good story is really about the journey? The journey of watching characters develop, grow, and evolve is more interesting than "they are really evil." Yes, even antagonists can do that throughout a story. They can grow and evolve and develop. They don't have to be the same person they were at the beginning, even if they end up being defeated and still being quote unquote evil. Okay? A defeat is that they don't go through with it. And what if the protagonist convinces them not to go through with it? I mean, does that seem boring? The protagonist going, "Don't do it," and the antagonist is like, "All right, you know what? I'm not going to do it." If you think that's boring, then you probably didn't like Spider-Man 2 with Doc Octopus. Dr. Octopus has a mission to continue to do the power of the sun in the palm of my hand, right? And Spider-Man convinces him with a quote, intelligence is a responsibility, right? It's a privilege. And Doc Ock is like, "I will not die the villain," and he like destroys the thing. Okay. I will say this though. The development and growth and evolution of a evil character is basically why we really love watching Magneto as a character. We know that his perspective is not necessarily evil in his mind, but the representation of the character from the protagonistic force is that he's pushing against the natural order of things. He looks at mankind as basically ants, as animals, and not necessarily the next evolution. But he also cares just as much as Professor X does as far as the nature of mutants. However, Professor X also cares about humans. So, he has those two worlds, right? And but we see Magneto move and grow throughout his stories. Even in the comic books, at one point or another, he becomes the leader of the X-Men. It's like, and he always has the same moral barometer that pulls him in, which is his relationship, his friendship with Professor X. And um, my point is, your antagonist is allowed to grow. Your antagonist is allowed to. And by the way, growth doesn't necessarily mean that they become quote unquote good. It just means, I mean, an example of a growth is Thanos. Thanos was like, I will half the world and half the resources. And then he grows to understand, well, maybe I definitely had to have been wrong because I have to destroy everything and start it over from scratch. Because as long as there are people that know what has come before them, they will try. And he's technically growing, you know? But we also see, as they say, he's the philosopher in the Infinity Wars, in the Infinity Gauntlet, whatever. He's the philosopher Thanos, and then in Endgame, he's the warmonger, So clearly there was growth from the warmonger to the philosopher. All right. One more thought on making your antagonist have weight. You've probably heard that an antagonist is the hero of their own story. I don't necessarily buy that. What I do buy is that they believe they are right, even when they know what they are doing is wrong. Thanos' mind is, I'm the only one who is willing to make the sacrifices to do what's right. It's not that he thinks he's the hero. He just thinks his actions are the right thing to do, that he's willing to die and all he's ever loved, which is very little, like Gamora, somebody he loved, he's willing to sacrifice that reality to help the world be better. So it's not that he thinks he's the hero. He just thinks that he will do what he believes is right at the cost of his morality, right? Not morality, his character. He knows that he's seen as the villain. He knows that he's feared. He knows that he, the just is it's picked at random, right? It's 50, half and half. But it's picked at random. So that's the moral barometer for him, where he's just like, well, it's not like I'm choosing who dies. It's random, But he doesn't think he's the hero. He just thinks he's right. Antagonists like this, they see the justice in their actions. They know that you have to break some eggs to make an omelet, right? Give your antagonist a chance to see the world in a way that makes sense to them and challenge that sense to watch them make choices. This also includes them having their own goals to accomplish and challenging those goals. So just like you have to challenge your protagonist, you have to give them opportunities to make choices. It's the choices they make that makes the story. The narrative is the choice. It's the story between the plot, choice, and the response to that is the story. If it's just plot, it's just things happening, but nothing is happening. If it's just choices with no plot, really, they're just doing whatever they want, then there's no complete narrative. So the story is the choices and how they react to those choices. The plot is what needs to happen or what is to happen. And then, the complete narrative is those things working in tandem. All right. Final thoughts. I've seen movies, shows, and read novels where the antagonist is the villain who is evil. You know what? I love it. I do. I'm not opposed to it. But there are other versions of that story. So, as a final thought, as an exercise, think about taking already established villains. As an exercise, take already established villains, antagonistic forces, random antagonists, and the story situations, and add your own voice. Now, we all know this is it's fan fiction, right? But as an exercise to work on developing characters and making that character that ends up here, right? Because you've read the story or seen the movie or watched the show, and then you get to make different choices so they don't end up here, right? Take those stories and go, well, where would they be if they changed their direction? And it's a good exercise to hone your skill to focus on the choices by challenging those choices, having the consequence of those choices, and then repeating the process of setup, challenge, consequence. All right. Now, how would you tell Star Wars? How would you rewrite Harry Potter? The thing with antagonists is that they come alive through your mind, through your voice as a writer. Imagine 10 different writers had a chance to write the same novel. That novel is Misery or Death of a Salesman. That finished novel would have 10 different stories. Even if those 10 stories, uh, even if those 10 writers, all right, wrote the story based on Stephen King's bullet point outline. Let's say Stephen King had an outline, which he doesn't. He's a pantser, right? Because he doesn't, right? But let's say he goes, here's the outline, and gave it to 10 writers. If you took that outline and then wrote it in your own voice, it would be a completely different story. And the challenges you bring to the plot points, because remember, plot points are not choices. They're things that have to inevitably happen, but how they get to those points is the story, right? It's the choices. It'd be different stories. So, and again, not that Stephen King writes with an outline because he's a pantser, but imagine Paul Sheldon in Misery crashes his car and is found by Annie Wilkes. How you write that scene is going to be different per writer. A bullet point for another scene would be Paul plans on escaping. Annie figures it out and has to punish Paul. We all know about the knife and the ankle smashing, but what if you didn't know about the ankle smashing and the knife? You just saw the bullet point. The plot point is Paul plans on escaping, makes an effort to escape, and he figures out he's trying to escape and punishes Paul. Those are plot points. Him getting a knife and her smashing, that's writing out the scenes. That's organizing the beats of the scene, but not the plot points. What would your scene look like if you had those two plot points? Paul plans on escaping, having to figure out how to escape, and Annie figures out that he's trying to escape and punishes Paul. What would your scene look like? Look at antagonists. Look, I have to say this. Antagonists are only as interesting as you see fit to dig deeper and give them choices, options, and consequences to the motivations. All right, that they make. You want to challenge your characters, antagonists or protagonists, while designing them. The other thing is when you come up with stuff, even if like before you write your story, you're like, you know what, my protagonist is grew up on a farm. All right. Well, were they poor? What would that look like? Did they have money? What would that look like? Did they have money, but the farm over the last couple of years got hit hard with the bad harvests? What does that look like? Are they adopted? And now are they adopted with this family for the farm? How are they adopted? Are they adopted randomly, or are they part of a family, but the family died and they took them? Like, make the choices and see where that character goes, and you'll develop a character. And you're allowed to go, you know what? I don't like where that's going. Let me start over. Let's change one element and see where it goes, right? And you could do that with your antagonists, and it helps you develop a strong, well-rounded, weighted antagonist. Because you want to understand who they are, because that's the interesting part. If we can understand why they are and the choices they make and how they deal with the failure of their choices and everything that comes with the choice, we are going to discover a character that comes out of the page and we become emotionally attached to, because we want to follow it. That's the part. What's going to happen? We're not interested in, I need diet wild cherry Pepsi. We're interested in, does he get it? Does he not get it? The tension, the conflict, that story, that's what people connect to. How they overcome trials and tribulations is more interesting than, I got my soda. Oh, I need soda. I got it. Let me go in the refrigerator. I got my soda. That's not interesting. I'm just saying. All right. The next video in the series will be me going over antagonists' presence in your story, and also having two villains in a story. So basically, What does the antagonist's presence in the story do to your story? And what would it look like if you had 2 or more villains in your story? Question: do you have a fan fiction story in your head? If so, what would it be and why? Let me know in the comments below. I'm just saying. And as always, if you want to learn a little bit more about your improving your craft, a little insight in the industry, and hear something from fellow authors on the podcast that we do, the Right Mindset Podcast, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out. All right, that's it. I guess we're done. Hey, as always, keep developing the right mindset.